My brother, Professor Thomas Pless, just got his fourth degree on his black belt last week after our 20-year anniversary of having our gym in Santa Fe. I was like, we gotta do a little podcast and talk about it. How do you feel?
I I guess I don't know really. It hasn't really sunk in just yet, I guess I'll figure out more what that means, down down the road.
Right.
I know it's a big interval, right?
Right.
Like the 5 years. I can distinctly acknowledge like a difference in like my understanding of the art, from degree to degree. But when when you start to, for me at least, when I start to look at the fourth degree, I don't think about the amount of knowledge. I think about time. Right. 5 years. It just, I think when I got my third degree, I was like, well, 5 years it's going to be a long time from now. It's like so far away. I don't know. I just didn't think about it. And then all of a sudden, I remember it being like 3 years from now, and then a year and a half from now, then all of a sudden it was there. So that's kind of the I guess the biggest thing is just like, wow, 5 years has gone by. It's a mile marker, right?
I had messaged you, right? Like, hey man, we should, try to do something, because it's 20 years of having, of the gym, 20 years.
Right.
And then, just the years go by, right? And then I'm like,
right.
holy shit, like Tom's fourth degree, that's a huge deal. And I was like, man, that's crazy, because you're New Mexico's first homegrown black belt. What that means, since I moved to Brazil and I came back, like, you were on the mat in New Mexico, in Santa Fe. You came up, you were the first black belt of New Mexico. I mean, probably maybe even the Southwest, I think, if I think about it, as far as like Americans, I don't know, Amal was up, he's in Colorado, but for New Mexico for sure. It's just such a big deal, I was like, man, that's crazy, and then we had such a crazy turnout with 2020 being so crazy,
Yeah.
Really, really cool.
I agree.
To be there, really special. And just really interesting that it also falls on your anniversary, right, of your fourth degree, right?
No, exactly. Yeah.
Grant was there. Like, you guys used to run the biggest gym. Well, Grant was like the head coach, right? And then you came in.
Right.
You guys were the head coaches of the biggest gym in Santa Fe, the Taekwondo. What was it called? Taekwondo
Institute.
Yeah. Back in the 2000. But you're like a martial art legend, Santa Fe. Like, just you've gone through everything there. You've been training for what did you start with when you?
So Taekwondo was actually, that was my first one, and when I started with that art, it's kind of weird. Like I didn't even know what Taekwondo was, like I've heard of karate, I've heard of Jiu-Jitsu. I'm sure I had heard the term, or heard judo before, but I had no idea what Taekwondo was, and I knew I needed to take something, and it just happened to be the school that was closest to where I lived, and so that's where I started.
Was it the Taekwondo Institute?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, at the time, it used to be like off of St. Michael's. Remember, above the Candyman, I guess.
Right. Okay, so you started there. There. Wow, that's crazy. Wow. So you started there, and then you got into Muay Thai. What was the progression?
Yeah, so I started, as I started going to Taekwondo classes at the Taekwondo Institute, and then eventually, kind of branched out into going to the Hapkido classes, which is another Korean martial art. And then, I was even going to the Tai Chi classes. I was just kind of hungry for any knowledge I could get. And at the apartment complex that I lived in, there was like a little gymnasium. And I got to talking to this gentleman that, he also was involved in martial arts, and he was taking Tang Sudo at the boys club here in Santa Fe. And so, he invited me over there, and there's this gentleman, I wish I could remember his name, but he was kind of like a fixture here in Santa Fe as far as working with the youth. And he was really well loved and respected. And so anyway, I did Tang Sudo with him for a while. And I think it was, I went to a karate point fighting tournament, right? I actually participated in it. And I won my division. And then afterwards, I went over to this little table, and they had all these books, martial arts books. And I saw this one book called, it was by this guy, Zorn Reebok. His name was, the name of the book was called Thai Boxing Dynamite. And I just started going through the pictures, and it just blew me away, because it just didn't look anything like what I thought martial arts was about, right? They weren't wearing any uniforms.
Traditional martial arts.
Yeah, it was these street kids, like, working in these very humble conditions, and they were like, throwing knees and elbows, and it looked, I don't know, it just looked radically different. So I was really intrigued by it, and I remember I kept talking to my father, about it. I'd love to take Muay Thai, and my dad at the time was delivering for Domino's Pizza, so he was pretty familiar with the town, right? He drove all over the place. And he says, I think there's like actually a Muay Thai here, Muay Thai school here in town. And I was like, wow, really? He's like, yeah, so I looked it up in the phone book, and sure enough, there's this place called Warrior Priest Arts, which now is known as Alive and Kicking, right, here in town. And it was owned by Doug Pandorf. Yeah. And so that was really big for me, because that was a complete departure from, everything I had done thus far. And it was really eye-opening. It was like a really critical moment, I think, in my life, going into that school.
How old were you at the time?
So at that time, I might have been like 16 or 17 years old at the time. So I'd started martial arts when I was 15. And then, it was about a year and a half, maybe closer to 2 years, when I finally bumped into the Muay Thai.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then you were telling your dad about Muay Thai, and you were trying to convince him. Go ahead.
Yeah. So no, I just, so, I kind of, when I was growing up as a kid, I got bullied a lot, right? And I needed to learn some form of self-defense. And I was begging my mom to enroll me in some kind of, karate classes or something like that. And she just had this perception of martial arts being like, this like really violent, culture, right? And she was like, no son of mine is gonna, learn to solve his problems with his fists, And so it was kind of forbidden for me to do martial arts. And I had brought it up multiple times over the years, and it was just like, her stance was like, well, when you can afford to pay for your own lessons and provide your own transportation, then you can do it, So that's when I was 15, I got a job at the McDonald's downtown. I bought myself a bicycle, and then I rode on over and, enrolled, and then I got obsessed, right? But yeah, I started going to the Muay Thai classes, and then, of course, they were doing the Filipino stick and knife stuff. And, that's where I met Arlen, I think, for the very first time,
Arlen Sanford.
Yeah. And, and then eventually, the way I found out about jiu-jitsu is my instructor at the time sent a little newsletter to all the students. And he was talking about that there was this gentleman that was going to be moving into town, and he was going to be teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I didn't even know there was like, I can't remember if I had heard of capoeira or not at the time, but he, said that he felt like the combination between Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would make a very formidable form of empty hand self-defense. So I had no idea what it was about, what it looked like, anything like that. I just remember like getting that letter, and I knew the classes were happening, but I just, I think with my work schedule, my social schedule, I never really made it to the classes. And I think like one day I went, they were rolling. I just didn't know what to make of it, right? Because they weren't doing anything from the feet at the time. Martial arts for me was like, you punch and kick, maybe throw from the feet. I didn't know what was going on. They were like on their knees and they were wrestling and stuff. I didn't really understand it. And so finally I decided to go and try a class, and it didn't make really any sense. I didn't really get it, right? And so I wasn't immediately attracted to it. It was like, okay, yeah, I just didn't know what to make of it, And then not long after that, I remember the first UFC came out, and the teacher of the class, and I'm spacing his name right now. You obviously know the individual I'm talking about. He told
Marco Gonzalez.
Marco Gonzalez, yeah. He said, there's you guys need to watch this UFC, right? And so I remember Doug had rented a big screen TV from the Rent-A-Center in town, and that was the first time, and it was like when you watch that first UFC, it was like, oh, okay, then now it makes sense. But I think like I didn't even pursue jiu-jitsu that much at that point. I ended up going into the military, and when you're in the military, you can't really you're not on your own schedule, right? And I didn't have a car, so my accessibility to continuing with my martial arts training was pretty limited at that point. And it wasn't until I finally once I got out of the military that I moved back here to town, and I think eventually I don't know if we had it right away. I don't really remember. Maybe we did, but I think we might have had a club going on. Right, there's some things that had happened. I think Marco wasn't in the picture at that time.
And Joe Bustos is your friend.
Yeah.
Like I remember I seen you at Doug's when Amal was in town. You would kind of
right.
And then you remember you went away for a while, and then I was in Brazil. Yeah, something like that. But you moved to Thailand for some years. I remember you were like.
Yeah. So I was there like just under a year. Like it was like nine months or so. So
okay. So let's talk about Thailand, man. the famous Professor Thomas Pless Thailand story.
No, it's a really awesome place. Unfortunately, I haven't been back, since I left, and I don't know, man. I found it. That was my first travel experience. I mean, as my family, we moved around a lot around the United States when I was young. And so I was a bit of a vagabond, but I never contemplated, going overseas or traveling like that. There was no desire. Like nobody had like really presented me with that concept, or what that meant or what it would be like. But, I loved Muay Thai. And so here was this opportunity. My instructors actually at the time made some contacts for me over in Bangkok. And so, I had that point of contact, which would set me up with transportation, room and board. And then they put me on like a half salary. And so there was no reason not to go. Right. So I went over there, and, I mean, it's just the learning curve was extremely high, right?
Because Doug Pandorf had learned from Arjan Chai, right?
Correct.
And so he's the one who introduced you to the guys in Thailand.
So they went for a I believe it was their honeymoon. It was Doug Pandorf and his wife Dawn Del Vecchio. It was their I believe it was their honeymoon, right? And so they spent, I believe, just a couple weeks. I might be wrong, but I think they spent like a couple weeks there. And of course, they went to a bunch of fights at the stadiums, and there's a gentleman that is like he's very familiar at the Lumpini Stadium, right? I think he was the only guy that was allowed to actually operate a Muay Thai fight camp out of Lumpini Stadium, right? So he would actually operate this fight camp, and he was a former champion. There's a book about the greatest champions of Muay Thai, and they have like the top 10 guys, and 3 of the top 10 guys reference their fights with this individual. Like incredible, he was around during the golden age of Muay Thai, and was a really prolific competitor. His name was Nurong Suri, and his nickname is Peck. And now I haven't seen it, but apparently he is now one of the coaches on that prison fight reality show.
In Thailand?
Yeah, in Thailand, right, where these guys fight for their freedom, right?
Okay.
But he's one of the coaches on there, and I haven't seen the show yet.
I'd watch that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if they win, they get out.
Yeah, something like that, right? So yeah, so he's one of the coaches on this show. But anyway, like at that time, that was my point of contact, right? And so he was a cab driver in Bangkok, and then, in the afternoons, late afternoons, early evenings, he ran this fight camp. And so he was the guy that set me up with my apartment and showed me where the camp was and how to get there. And it was within walking distance, it was like, I don't know, like maybe a mile or something like that, so I'd walk in every day and go train. And usually it was around like, 4:00 in the afternoon. We trained like, 6:30, 7:00 at night. That camp was really interesting because it was positioned in the city dump, right?
The city dump?
Yeah. So it was in this area of Bangkok called Klong Toi. And Klong Toi is like, it's like it's kind of like the main slum inside Bangkok. And there was like the city dump where there's literally like mountains of trash, and it was located kind of underneath this highway bridge, So the first day we got there, I remember the cab pulls up, and my friend Joe and I would get out of the back of the cab, and I looked at him, it's very surreal. I looked at him, and he wore glasses, right? And the pollution level there in Klong Toi is like apparently like 20 times the danger level, right? It's like smoking like a pack and a half of cigarettes a day or something like that, like the air quality level. And I remember looking over him, and his glasses immediately fogged up, and he took his glasses off, wiped them off on his shirt. We walked a few more steps, and we heard like some god awful sound. And this dog comes running right in front of us with like a live rat in its mouth, and the rat's like squealing, and it was like, whoa. It's like where this is really happening, And the camp was so humble, but it had everything you needed. I mean, it basically was a boxing ring, and they would roll out this old piece of carpet right in front of the boxing ring. And one of the ring posts, they had welded like a heavy bag off of it, right? So it kind of hung off on the outside. And this training area also doubled as a family's living quarters, right? There was an outhouse that was right next to the ring, and a little picnic table, and they kept all their belongings padlocked inside the outhouse. And so about the time that I finished my training, the kids had the kids that lived there had gotten back from school. They had finished their homework. And so they would oftentimes invite us to eat. So we'd change places. The kids would get up from the picnic table. They would go into the ring, and the mother and father would open up the, let me turn this off. The mother and father would open up the outhouse, and they would take out the TV set. And they had a little TV set, and they plugged it into one of the ring posts. They had actually set up one of the ring posts where it had electricity. it had an outlet built into it. And so
It's not dangerous, right? That's not dangerous.
Yeah, nothing dangerous about that. You don't want to get stuck in that corner, but then they would put these like pillows and blankets on the ring, and they would watch cartoons, and there was nothing really different about our life and their life other than just the living situation. It was extremely humble, but it was really cool. I mean, everybody there seemed really happy. Yeah, it was a really wonderful experience. And there wasn't a lot of people that went to the camp at that time. He had guys like, flying in and out, being that he was always at Lumpini Stadium. He could kind of go through the crowd and he would, search out foreigners, right? They had money, right? And so he would go up and he'd get them to try to come to his camp or something like that. Somehow, he tried to do some business transaction with them, So we had people coming in and out of the camp all the time from all over the world, but he always paid these like insanely high level guys that fought there, guys that were number 3 at Lumpini Stadium or whatnot. And they would come in, and that would be my training partner for the day. And so I had this access to this like world-class Muay Thai practitioners, and you just, you pick up like little tricks here and there.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
What an experience.
Yeah.
Wow. And so how long you stayed in that one camp for? How long?
I mean, that was kind of my main home, to be honest, for like a while. But I learned after a while to kind of you want to travel around, right? Because a lot of the camps, they have like their trademark techniques, and they're really proud to show you these techniques as soon as you get into the camp, right? But after 2 or 3 weeks, you don't really get to see too much new stuff, So if you're okay with traveling every little bit, you can go to all these different camps. And I don't even know all the different ones. We went to one there's like an area, I believe it's called Huamak, which is where a bunch of the universities are. It's like a little college district, right? And there was inside one of the gymnasiums at the university, there was a Muay Thai camp there. We went there. I remember going to we took a train or a bus, I believe, south, ended up in some like little beach town, trained Muay Thai there. And then, sometimes we would go to the various islands and they had camps there. It's the national sport.
Did you ever go to Sidiotong, the Pattaya?
Sidiotong, no. So I knew about it, right? It was kind of on the outskirts of Bangkok. Knew about it, and I the gentleman Sidiotong, right? It's named after him, right? He's this it was like this renowned promoter. He was the promoter in Bangkok at that time. And I remember he was at, every time I would go to Lumpini or Rajamdanan, Rangsit Stadium, any of those stadiums, he was always present, right? He was the man. I remember he had these these big glasses, right? They were kind of like
right.
Tinted or something like that, but yeah, he'd even been in movies and stuff, right? I think even when the Tony Jaa guy came out and started doing the Ong Bak films, right? I think there's some cameos with Ajahn Sidiotong in the film, I believe, So yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot different because I went like after one of my UFC fights, I went with Adit and yeah, we went to just like a day trip to Pattaya, to that camp, because my coach here in LA, Walter was there with the guys, and then I went to Phuket, in the south, and did a little seminar because I was friends with the guy who ran the camp there, Real
Tiger.
Yeah, Tiger Muay Thai.
Okay.
And then to those people islands and stuff. Did you make it down there?
No, so I have been to Phuket. And I just went there like as kind of like a vacation thing. I think I had a girlfriend at the time that came to visit me, and we ended up taking like week or 2 week trip, down towards that part of the peninsula. But that was the only time. Some of the guys over here, Angelo, he likes to go to Tiger. So every time he goes to Thailand, he doesn't stay any time in Bangkok. He goes right there.
Yeah, because Bangkok is so. I mean, Bangkok is one thing, right? Like just the the noise and just the energy and the smells, But man, you were training at like next to a dump, like the guys, Joe's glasses, right? Were getting like so foggy from all the dust,
Right.
Like the families living on the, in the, wherever the ring is, plugging their TV into the ring,
Right.
and I can't even. How was the smell at that?
I didn't even.
You probably just get used to it, right?
The smell. What? So from my apartment, there's this incredible Asian market, like that, like old school, right? Like, lately in the news with all the COVID stuff, they've been referencing like wet markets, right? There's one of those next to my place. Well, the reason it's called Klong Toy, a Klong is like an open air estuary. It's basically a river of shit, right? And it carves its way through the city. They don't have they don't have like a modern irrigation system there at all, so they've actually they get a lot of students that go over there and they do these internships, or they'll do these projects where they work with people and try to correct that, but the infrastructure is already there. I don't know, I haven't been there in 20 years, so I don't know what it's like now, but at that time, you had this river, and you'd cross the bridge, and that thing was like, would bake in the sun. I mean, it's jungle heat, so it's incredibly hot there. And that the top layer of whatever was in that stuff would almost turn into like a peanut brittle, right? Like almost like this like gray, like this crust gray stuff. And it would kind of like fissure
right next to the wet market.
Yeah. Where you would buy your food. There was like buffets there. I go eat there all the time.
Did you ever get any bat? Did you ever buy a bat?
No way. Oh, I don't know. Like I could get by all right there, but there was a lot of times I didn't, I couldn't, I couldn't speak the language very, very well, well enough to kind of get by. But I would just point to things, and then they would give it to me. I have no idea what I'm eating, I just like eat it, hope for the best. But you would cross that bridge, right? And that kind of stunk. That stunk for sure. But the heat, right? I think that's the thing, the main thing in your senses. Like if you're not accustomed to that, it's an overwhelming sensation. It's like this, like, I don't know, like wet towel, like constantly on your face. And it's not a comfortable temperature either,
I remember you telling me like years later, because when you spent a lot of time we went to Brazil times, and you're telling me like, man, I miss like the smells of Thailand. It's the craziest things.
Yeah, well, the foods, right? The foods, their culinary arts are, I don't know, man. I don't think I've ever experienced anything like it. Like, I've been like various places in South America and Central America, the Caribbean, throughout Southeast Asia and Europe. And I've never experienced like a diversity in, tastes, experimentation, smells of food. I mean, it's just, if you're a foodie, man, you have to go to Thailand. And there's like, and even upon the regions, right? There's people get highly experimental. There's like certain dishes that are really popular in a particular area. And
because you went to different places like Cambodia, Laos, right? You went
Laos.
You went to
Yes.
So you traveled around in that area, the different
so once you get in, they can stamp your passport for 90 days, but they don't have to, right? So I think it just like whoever's like the guy that does that, he just kind of like looks at you and he's like, 30 days, whatever he deems he feels like is appropriate, by looking at you. And so, if they stamp you 30 days, well, 30 days later, you got to leave the country. Well, the thing is, you can always like leave and come right back in. And so it forces you to go to Vietnam, go to Malaysia, go travel around, you go out, come right back in. And then they just stamp you again. Maybe you're lucky and you get stamped for a longer length of time, but yeah, it forced me to kind of go around in those other areas. And those other areas, it literally was kind of like in and out, sometimes, you might spend like a day or two, but yeah, the territories that kind of outline Thailand, they're much more intense, right? You're talking about like Myanmar, like Cambodia. I mean, this was 1999, I believe, 98, 99 when I was there, right? So it was 1 year after the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia collapsed. Pol Pot, I think, had died. Wow. At Angkor Wat, like in 98. And so that whole genocide that was occurring there, right, had kind of come to an end, even though the Khmer Rouge was still there, right? Yeah. So
what did you see
wasn't
when
like
you
a
went
place
there?
you'd want to hang out.
What did you see? What did you see when you were there? Because I've read all.
The time that I spent like the most amount of time, I went to it's called what is it? I can't remember what the name of the city is right now, but it translates to Siam Conquered, right? And Siem Reap, and that's Siem Reap is where Angkor Wat Park is, right? And that's been in a bunch of movies and stuff. And it's not just one temple; it is a collection of temples, right? And as world renowned as this one place is, it's incredibly dangerous because you have to stay on these very, these paths. You cannot deviate from the path. There is no like walking a few feet off the grass because it's loaded with ordnance, right? There's tons of landmines and unexploded ordnance from Vietnam era that's just out there. Plus the Khmer Rouge planted a ton of stuff out there too. So you see amputees everywhere in Cambodia. They're all over the place. So I mean, so you're in a place that you think like, well, I'm sure the government has come in and kind of cleaned up that area, made it safe for tourists. Well, not really, So you still like, even though you're on the park grounds, you're kind of on your own. You have to really kind of take it seriously, right? Because you can get severely injured or killed. Yeah, so it's a cool place.
Landmines, don't step on the landmines.
Yeah, right.
It's one thing to go on the trail, right? But if you step off, like not about falling off, but stepping on a landmine, blow off your leg, and that was still there.
You imagine like bringing up a family there, right? There's all these children there. In fact, they have. I had a guy that was a student here at the school that he worked for a foundation where they built like playgrounds for amputee children. I mean, there was like so many amputee children that's what they, this guy went over there all the time and put these things together, So he had been over there like, I don't know, like several dozen times, and he had some pretty amazing stories.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And what about the, Pol Pot, like he separate all the families and the mass genocide, like were you able to see like society at all, or were you just at the tourist spots?
No, I mean, when you're talking about tourist spots, I mean, there's like, it was me. I was the tourist spot. There's not a lot of people there at all. Like people just didn't venture there at that time. Like now, I think there was a show with Anthony Bourdain where he went to Cambodia, and they actually had an area in, I'm I'm spacing right now, but the main city that's there, he they have an area which is set up for tourists, it's a very safe area. There's, a lot of things to buy. When I went there, it was nothing like that. They hadn't put any thought at all into cultivating a tourism industry. So it was just like a place that, you had seen on Google or something like that,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad was, he was over there. He went to the Vietnam War, so he was, it was classified, I guess, at the time, but he was on the Cambodian side, so I was like looking it up, and he had his camp, A camp, and that is like Mekong Delta area. Yeah. So I remember that name, that's crazy, man. That's some craziness, and those times. And you went there right when they opened up, right when the regime fell.
Yeah. So those people were there. They were still in the community. Yeah. So this guy, Pol Pot, right? He was, he is a Cambodian native, but he was educated in France, right? So he went to the universities there, and he had this very proto-fascistic vision of how, Cambodia should be. And he felt like they had all these, socioeconomic problems. And so his cure for that was to start everything back from the beginning, So I think they were, the Khmer Rouge was, I believe they were financed by these Russian mafia guys, which supplied them with weapons. And they were basically like hillbillies, right? They lived in the jungles, and they were all these young people, and they just kind of gave them weapons, marched them into Phnom Penh, right? Phnom Penh is the main city there. That's the capital, about 1 million people. And they marched them in there. And I guess the United States had found out that these guys were on their way in. Wasn't sure what to make of that, but they evacuated forces, U.S. forces out of there. And so when the U.S. forces left, the Khmer Rouge was hailed as liberators. That's what they thought. They thought they had saved them, but they were there to annihilate, and they just started, they did this whole thing. It was almost like that Stephen King novel, Children of the Corn, right? Where the parents or the kids would turn in their parents, and they would execute the parents, right? So it was, they were like eliminating art, music, history, everything. In fact, he ended up setting the Cambodian calendar back to year 0, right?
Right.
And that's kind of what happened.
2000 years back.
Yeah. Freaking crazy, but so 98, this guy, he gets sick. I think he got cancer or something like that, and he was hauled up inside some kind of temple perch there in Angkor Wat, and that's where he kind of lived out the rest of his days, and he died, and that was 98. And then I was there 1 year after that, so those people were still there, but I think they had kind of got their country back to some degree. It's always been like a struggling area, but it's really neat for sure. A lot of history.
What an experience, yeah. And so fast forward, we're back to you come back to New Mexico, you come back to Santa Fe, and is that the time? So I came back in 2000, right? Beginning of 2000. And so I remember you were one of the first students, in when I started the group up,
right.
I think it was an Aikido place, and I put some flyers up right in town.
Right.
That's like marketing back then. And so you came back, and then that's when you started jiu-jitsu, like for real?
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I had all this exposure, but I couldn't there was no school, right? There was no school, and I think the little bit that I was getting, it just kind of brushed upon the idea of what jiu-jitsu resembled. But it wasn't until you and, Amal, I think, were coming back and forth from Brazil. And that was in 97. I remember Amal coming out, and then one of those seminars, I don't know, it might've been 98, maybe something like that. I seem to remember you as a blue belt, I believe.
Yeah.
And you came in, you did like a seminar, but so anyway, I would record all of the seminars, and I took some private lessons with Amal as well. And so then when you guys would go back, you just practice those series of moves that we had, just watch tapes over and over again and just practice it and try to understand it. Maybe you get like 15 or 20 moves down. You guys would come back, you learn like another series, connect that to the rest of the hub. And so, yeah, in 2000, I think like you already had the school going for a little bit, but I was in transit, right? I was kind of, I think, coming back from Thailand around that time. And there was starting to be like a faction of guys from the school that I was at that were going to go train at your place, right? Guys like Jim Keller and Chris Torres, right? And so there was those guys that were going over. And so shortly around that time, that's when I left the gym that I was at. I was working at the Taekwondo Institute with Grant, right? We were both teaching over there, and turned Grant onto it. And he started coming over. So all these people in the martial arts community were like, wow, they knew it was like how special jiu-jitsu was. And I think they understood how difficult at that time was. Like now it's, 20 years later, it's not a big deal to go learn jiu-jitsu. I mean, there's still pockets in this country where it's, it's a little difficult to get to, but I mean, in this town, right? But there's like 3 or 4 schools or something like that in this teeny tiny little town. But back then, man, I mean, there was nothing, so to have access to not just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but like world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was unheard of, right? So everybody that like martial arts mattered to them, they took advantage of it, So that was that first group.
Yeah. What are some of the names that came through Santa Fe Jiu-Jitsu names?
Oh, wow. So we had, of course, Big Dan, right? Dan Christensen, right? He was a really, at our school. And of course, there's, Tate Fletcher and Isaac Valley Flag. We had Sarah Boyd, CJ McHugh. I mean, the one little school, it's like all these.
Sarah won the Pans, yeah.
Yeah, they're all, they've done a lot. I think, they did some really critical things, like in the, in the inception of this MMA jiu-jitsu,
right?
This wave of it, at least,
And because how many people live in Santa Fe?
I think we're about 80,000 people.
80,000 people.
Yeah, I think that the last census has got us around there. So.
And so, what are some of the names like that I brought out to Santa Fe to do seminars and things like that?
Oh, the people that we brought out. Oh man.
Back in the day.
So the first one that I remember was Sonaki.
That
was the first.
Helio Morera.
Yeah, that was the first seminar that I remember. And there was not many people there. I think there was like 4 people at that seminar. And I remember he taught for like 2 hours, and and the reason I remembered the thing, because I was trying to take notes, right? And I wrote down like 70 different techniques on there, and then I think after I looked at my notepad and I couldn't make out any of stuff. I had one of these like crude little stick figures, and then at my best try to like, because he was going through stuff really rapidly.
Right.
And then he'd give you a few minutes to like drill the technique, and then he'd move on to the next thing. And I think I remember at one point, like I was like practicing one of the moves, and he came over and he picked up my notebook and he like looked at it and he's just like, like, okay, like, I don't know if you're gonna be able to track any of this stuff.
Amal brought him down, right? Amal brought him down from
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And he taught me. I remember him teaching in his Speedos.
That's classic.
Those are the days, right?
Yeah. But yeah, for sure, man. I mean, we had Gordo, right? Gordo was there.
Yeah.
And then we had who else? Oh gosh, Soka,
yeah.
Of course, Alexandre,
Valij, right?
Valij.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many guys, and then even like towards the end, I remember when we brought down you brought down Braulio Estema, right? He was over at Amal's place. He was a brown belt at the time.
Brown belt, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He had just won like the Pan Ams or something like that.
Yeah, he tapped everybody out and like weight and open weight, right? With
like 5 minutes.
Yeah. all the combined matches lasted 5 minutes. So like 30-second matches, right?
Yeah. Insane, yeah.
And he took the bus. I remember he took the Greyhound bus down, and I guess I fell asleep or something happened where I couldn't pick him up, and it was middle of the night. It was freezing, but he figured it out and got a hotel, and we saw him in the morning. You there? I think we froze up a little bit. You there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. Yeah. We had Hoist Gracie, right? Hoist Gracie come out.
Hoist Gracie. We had Master Carlos.
Master Carlos, yeah.
And Marcio Feitosa and Kira Gracie.
Right. Yeah, man. Little Santa Fe, we brought all those guys out, right? He hasn't been back since, right? Yeah. I think Hoist Gracie, man.
That was cool.
That was just such a kind of a full circle moment, I think, right? Because him watching him back in those days, and then having him come to Santa Fe and watching the UFC with him in like Cliff's living room, right?
Right. Yeah.
Crazy.
I remember we
were watching the UFC with Horace Gracie.
Yeah. Well, we had originally, right? We were going to do it over at the bar that I worked at, right?
Right.
I worked at El Paseo, and we had set up a little party over there. And the owner of the bar had actually paid for the pay-per-view event, and then somehow the word got out to the local cable area, and he was just paying for the rent, the pay-per-view itself. And so I think they charged him like, I don't know, whatever that was, like $1,500. Like, if you're going to show it at your bar, this is the fee that you pay. So he paid that. We all got there, and it snowed. Remember, it was in the winter. It snowed that night, and the dish on the roof got covered with snow, and canceled out the pay-per-view signal. And people just got up, and somebody said, "I can get it at my house. Let's go." Everybody left the bar. It was empty. And the owner was like left with this like $1,500 bill. He's just like,
oh my God.
But no, that was really cool. That was really cool. He did like four seminars, right?
Yeah.
Two a day on a Saturday, and then another 2 on Sunday.
Yeah.
Wow. And you had I only did one, but I remember there must have been some people there that did like all 4 or did like several of the units, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah, we had to fill them up. We had to cut off every class, right, at a certain limit. So
right.
Have enough room and stuff. That's pretty cool. What about the tournaments? Talk about some old tournament stories. Traveling to Brazil, we used to go to Florida a lot, driving to Los Angeles, right?
Yeah. So the first one I remember going to with you was I think it was Grappler's Quest. Because as a white belt, I think I did Grappler's Quest, and I also did the U.S. Open, which, what was that, in Santa Cruz or something like that?
Cruz, yeah.
Um, yeah, but I think the Grappler's Quest was the very first one, and that was really cool, man. Because that that tournament, I haven't been to it in years, but they have it paired up now with the UFC Expo, right?
It did,
And
yeah, like a year or two, yeah.
yeah, and it draws like what, like 2,500, 3,000 competitors. It's like a
Mhm.
major tournament, right? It almost rivals one of the, like, some of the IBJJF tournaments, right?
Mhm.
They get a lot of competitors. But that first year that I remember going, there was like maybe 250 people there, and that was a really cool time in jiu-jitsu because it was truly a subculture, you know like people just didn't really know about it. And I remember, like, we went to the tournament, and at that time there was no there was no attire or whatever that associated
It
one
was
with
no gi, right? It was no gi as well.
it
That
was a no
tournament.
gi. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a lot of no gi tournament. And so those guys from Tap Out, right? They came in their little van, and then they were wearing the costumes and stuff, and they came out and, like, were selling like a few T-shirts out there. That was like the first time. And I remember, like, walking in there, Chuck Liddell was there, right? I think he'd fought like in like maybe one UFC, but he's got this very, that was at the time when you knew all the fighters,
He
right?
was
So you could
coaching, yeah.
follow.
He was coaching Jake Shields, I think. Jake
Oh
Shields
wow, yeah.
was I think I went against Jake Shields at that tournament. Yeah. But he was coaching Jake Shields. Yeah, the who's who in that, you had 250 people, right? But it was like the who's who in jiu-jitsu at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Eddie Bravo was like a purple belt,
Yeah,
It was
I
like,
think that was the first, because I remember hanging out with him. We've been friends since blue belts, but that was the first no-gi tournament he had won,
yeah.
at 2000, that Grappler's Quest in 2000.
Yeah, that was really cool, man. Just so many legends of the sport, um, just so early on. But it's just amazing how much it's grown in such a short period of time. But yeah, we did a lot of. That's the one thing about the Santa Fe group. We're road warriors, right? We drive to a lot of tournaments, and that was just like the culture. I don't remember it ever being like a thing that we hated. Just get in the car and drive, right? And you pile up a bunch of people in the car. But I remember, like, one of the funny stories I remember is, you guys were coming back from a tournament. It was Grappler's Quest tournament, must have been, right, in Vegas, and you guys had a van. And I can't remember if this was the van that you were in or whatnot, but your cousin Tomas, right?
Tomas, yeah.
Yeah, you guys were driving at night, and he had to use the bathroom or something like that, right? So he pulls over the van on the side of the road, and he steps out of the van, and he must have parked it right on the side of like a cliff or something like that. And he just stepped out and just disappeared into the into the darkness. He just saw him exit, and then he was just gone, like that, or like magic or something like that. And then it's like, then what do you do where he was? And I remember you guys telling me something like, you're looking over the cliff, and he's like scaling back up the rock. He's like scratched up, and dirt and weeds in his hair, and he's like, like a zombie or something like that coming back. He's all messed up.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Some of those road trips are crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Did you go to Texas with us at one time?
No, that was the one where you guys went with
I think Grant. I remember Grant went, and a couple other.
yeah. You guys had like four, like there was that guy Manny, right? Didn't that guy Manny go with you? Remember that Manny was like the really big dude, right?
Yeah.
Like thick legs, arms, like just a big body, and he was like a specimen, right? He could move like a
Oh,
cat.
man, yeah.
Yeah. But I remember you guys took him over to a tournament, and he just manhandled everybody, it was with Chong, right? You guys go to that tournament with Chong?
All right, yeah. I don't know, yeah. But we went to Colorado, like, I don't know how many times,
Yeah.
right? Remember some of those karate tournaments, because we had to
Yeah.
compete in karate tournaments before there was Grappler's Quest, right?
Right.
And what is that? Do you remember any other crazy stories? Like going to LA, Joe Duran.
The only thing I remember being I think it was in Orlando, right? And oh man, I can't remember what set it off, but I remember like, oh god, Joe Duran. He was a blue belt at the time, right? I think he must have been, right, because there was no white belt division at that time. There was no novice division,
right?
And so I remember he somehow got in this like pissing contest with Professor Kleber Luciano, right? And there was something like he says like, "You're gonna meet my professor tomorrow." He's like he was talking about you or something. Like I can't remember, but something happened, and he got like kind of in his face and told him this whole thing, and it was really funny, Yeah, I can't remember, like some days, I mean, there's a lot of moments that kind of stick out in my head, but these mats, in fact, the mats that we still have here, some of them are like, I mean, we've replaced a lot, but some of them there's probably a few out there that are like almost 20 years old. They've just been very carefully taken care of, and they're positioned in a particular place. But yeah, those mats have seen like a lot of, I'm sure if we were to scrape off the DNA of those mats, we could recreate the original Santa Fe Jiu-Jitsu team.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Joe Diddy, man. He's like the nicest guy, Joe Duran, and yeah, that's crazy. That's funny. I was like my debut, right? My black belt debut. I was because he was a big deal, right? In California and I mean US, right?
Yeah.
And he's always very vocal, right? At tournaments,
Right. Now he's still I have a friend and she trains at his school, right? She's been there for like a long time, so he's still at it. It's cool to see these people that I don't know, either close to or from afar. You've kind of grown up with this community, and you've seen them when they're like young and they're like destroying. They're awesome, and then then they have families and they have their students, and that's a really incredible experience, to kind of witness that.
We had Genesis, right? You had Genesis get her brown belt, this last week, and I mean, you've been teaching her since she was how old?
Man, I mean 4 or 5, maybe even younger. She might have been even like 3 or something like that, and she was really tiny at the time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So her and her older brother trained Taekwondo with me for a number of years. And then I remember Sergio coming in with his wife, and they would watch the class, and they really love martial arts, and if you know those guys, they very quickly become a very critical part of whatever community they're in, like whether it be at their church, with their friends, where they work, in this case, in martial arts, right? And so, yeah, they, when Grant and I left the Taekwondo Institute and decided to full on, because I think Grant like started, either he was going to the Southwest Acupuncture Clinic, maybe that was the thing, or maybe you had asked him to teach the kids class or help out with the kids class, right?
Right.
So when that happened, and I left shortly thereafter too, they followed us, right? And so they came over there to the Jiu-Jitsu Academy and pretty much have been with us since. So yeah, almost 2 decades. Unreal.
That's crazy. 20 years. She's 20. She's got to be 24 or something now, right?
Yeah.
24. That's crazy.
Yeah, something like that.
I know it's like, it's hard to remember, right? Or just kind of, just talk about one person. What are some moments that you're very proud of? I mean, that's got to be one of the moments, right? Of just seeing these kids grow up, what are some other great memories you have over the years of teaching?
You know, for a while there was a moment where I got like really excited about coaching for MMA, right? And I never had, you know, being in a little town, I never had like a large MMA team, but we had like a core group of guys, right? And really worked hard to make those guys the best that I could at that time, you know. And some of those guys, they went on to, you know, they became King of the Cage champions.
Ben Mulhern, right? You trained him up to become King of the Cage champion and went to the UFC.
Right. And they were even on that bully beatdown show. Remember that on MTV?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Were the guys that would beat up the bullies. So and then from there, like they ended up, you know, some of the guys, you know, getting on Strike Force and then, you know, then competing in the UFC. So that was really cool because I don't know, it's very, in order to properly take care of the students here at the school and to take care of the fighters, we had to have camp at the end of the night. So at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night is when we would start the MMA camp. And then I tried to rationalize it. Well, this is roughly the time that fights are happening. So now you guys are getting accustomed to, you know, your body's kind of peaking at that time. But we would have these long ass training sessions that would go to midnight or after. And, you know, here, an interesting story, and I'm sure you've heard this one before, but there was one night I was there at the academy. It must have been around midnight, right? And we had just finished like a long session of like striking drills and sparring patterns with like big gloves, right? And now we were going to transition into like doing more of the ground specific stuff. So I told the guys to change out their gloves, and, you know, they put their MMA gloves on and tape it so, you know, the Velcro doesn't scratch or whatever, you know, so they're doing that whole process. And so they all left. This was at the old school. Remember, we had the two rooms, the two mat rooms with the office space in between. Well, all the gloves were located on the far end. So they left the grappling room to go into the striking room, get their stuff, and left me in there by myself. And I'm just kind of like looking out at the windows. I was looking out onto Resolana, and, you know, it's late at night, so there's not a lot of traffic. And I see this car peel off the Sirius Road, like kind of very quickly, right? And it comes down the road, and then it turns into the business directly across the street from us. There was like a tire shop or something like that, right? And so the guy pulls back kind of close to the dumpster, and you can kind of hear that they're playing music kind of loud, you know? And they were kind of sitting there for a while, and just the whole thing, like the timing, like the energy kind of behind it. You know, I start like, you know, these weird ideas start popping in the back of my head, and I start thinking about like, maybe this guy's dumping off a body or something like that. It's just like, just a thought, right? I didn't even think it was anything serious. And man, I don't know if it was my imagination, but I thought I heard some screaming, but that didn't seem right because I would have been listening to that through the glass across the street into their vehicle. So I thought maybe it was just my imagination, and they had been there for a while. Nobody got out of the car. And so I started to lose interest. And so I just started to turn my head, and all of a sudden the door opened, the driver's side door opens. And this guy gets out of the car, and he grabs this body by the ankles and starts pulling them out of the car through the driver's side. And it's limp, right? In fact, when the back and the head came off the driver's side seat, the head hit the concrete, and he starts dragging the body back towards the dumpster. And I was sitting there, and I was like, in my head, I'm like, holy shit, this guy actually is dumping off a body, you know? And so all of a sudden he climbs up on top of the body, and this is happening very quickly, right? It's like, you know, I'm telling the story, but it's happening very quickly. And all of a sudden he climbs up on top of the body, and he gets to like mount, he's punching this person in the face. And then I could very clearly hear it was a woman on the bottom, right? And I just said like, oh my God, this guy's, you know, beating this woman. And all of a sudden I see Sergio's face like pop right next to mine. And he had his wrestling shoes on, right? And he just unlocks the door and sprints across the street. And Professor Bobby was there. one of the girls, Zuhei, she was there. Anyway, they all go across the street and they grab this guy and they pull him off this woman, and they have him over the hood of the vehicle, right? And Professor Bobby's, I don't think he was currently with the police department at the time. I don't know if he was retired at that point. He might have still been with them, but he's got them kind of over. And I remember he did have a police radio, right? So he calls for dispatch, and they brought out some officers. But this apparently these guys had been at a club and they were doing some crystal meth, and they got kicked out of the club, and then things just kind of escalated, right? And the whole inside of the car was like covered with blood. And I remember like one of our girls, she was talking to the girl, and she just got very emotional, right? Like seeing this woman kind of hurt like that. And this guy had his arm, behind his back. He's bent over the hood of the car, and she just went over there and started teeing off on this guy's face. Well, they were just getting ready for training, so they had their mouthpieces in, they had their MMA gloves on. And so this guy's like, at first he thought we were the cops, and all of a sudden he's like looking at all these people with their mouthpieces in. He's like, hold on a second, you guys aren't police. But anyway, the police came, and they they see the guy. He's like, kind of like, it's been obviously something's happened to him, and the cop's like, before he puts the guy in the cruiser, he's like, hey, you guys didn't touch this guy, did you? And like, oh, no, sir, no. He's like, okay. Well, that was it, crazy, man. Like, we just happened to be there at the right time at the right place, And like, had we not done that, like, who knows what would have happened to that girl,
And the right people, right? The right people. That's crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, like you're really humble. You've always been very soft-spoken, very humble, and you put your heart and soul into all these guys, like training them for fights, like a lot of years. Training people for tournaments, just being there for the community, right? Always my like right-hand man, and soldier, and you gave your heart and soul, to the community, to the gym, so I really appreciate, I appreciate you,
Professor.
Appreciate your loyalty, your friendship, I appreciate you, so I thank you for everything. I wanted to just ask one more question, like, what are you grateful for out of all these memories? And
it's the people, I would say. It's not, my personal growth is, you're a very tough teacher. And I think that's what I needed. And I think that's what a lot of the core group, that's what we needed, that made us who we are. But it's all the people that have come into our gym, you as our teacher, the people you brought in to help influence us, your teachers, the team that you cultivated, right? It's all these people. It's just the friendships, getting to know other people in many ways is a way of kind of getting to know ourselves. Because we measure ourselves, we contrast against other people. That's how we kind of figure out, well, this is who I am, or at least our perception of ourselves, right? And the culture that was set up at the school it's such an open, friendly, family-oriented culture, and not every gym has that, and you set the stage for that. And, I've just tried to, if anything, just kind of, maintain that. But yeah, it's the people, the fact that they've been willing to share so many years of their life and who they are. There's no hiding on the mat, right? Whatever it is you're going through in life is going to get exposed. It's going to come out, and there's something about the camaraderie, the trust you develop with your peers, the people that you train with. There's not too many things that you can get into in life where you're going to have like a mirror. You're gonna have that ability to get to know people, or as many people as well as you get to know them in jiu-jitsu. I don't know if that kind of makes sense or
Totally.
not.
Yeah.
So it's just like
being authentic, right? Being authentic, being your true self.
So the techniques and stuff, I mean, jiu-jitsu's, for detail oriented people, it's super immersive. It's so interesting, but it almost like the friends that you make almost kind of trump the art. It's the art that kind of brings them together. It draws these really unusual characters. Some of the best people I think in this world, have been on our mats. So I thank you for giving that to us. Had you not gone, and like I said, many times at our seminars, like, that it requires a lot of courage to go and do the things that you did at the time that you had done them, and to bring back and share that with us and help build that community. This place is such a special place for so many people, so I would have to say the people, the people in the relationships.
Yeah. Thank you, man. I was so proud to be there last week, with everybody. And especially it just it was the perfect time, 2020, you getting your 4th degree, 20 years of Santa Fe Jiu-Jitsu in Santa Fe, really special moment, so I'm just so proud to be there, to have my part, but, it's been now like for the last, I moved out to LA, my son is 13, so 13 years ago, I was there, I had the school for, 7 years almost, right? Something like that.
Right.
But I wrote a little post, I gave my heart and soul I wanted you guys to be the best. And we took you guys all over the country and Brazil and the world, literally like Japan, everywhere else, everywhere we could, wherever there were fights, wherever there were tournaments.
None of the students ever dispute that stuff, man. They are like that was the place to be. I mean, so many of those people that were, part of this original school when you were the professor here, man, that was you had some destroyers there, some very strong-willed, strong people, wonderful people, incredible martial artists. And for a tiny little school, for us to go and compete on a global stage and not just hold our own, but, and many times kind of like break records, right? To become like the first to win these major tournaments and stuff like that. I mean, not too many people can say that, Yeah. And that's all out of one place.
Yeah. Yeah. What's next for you?
We'll see, man. Like right now with this COVID stuff.
Yeah. I know it's hard to, right? It's hard to look forward, right? Let's get through 2020.
It's like it's like there's been a pause button on life, and like my focus now is just like, maintaining my happiness, not trying to get too freaked out at, the reality. I go into class sometimes and there's only a few people here, and it's, it's part of it's like, it's the time of year, it's the holidays, but it's this whole COVID thing. And, this year we've been closed for close to 6 months total, half the year we've been closed. So, jiu-jitsu, especially for beginners, you have to be consistent, right? It's very easy to get sidetracked. And so, I think the love is there, I mean, obviously we had that seminar, look how many people showed up, so there still remains a lot of passion. People they're being safe. They're taking care of the people that they care about in their lives, so we appreciate that. And, we'll do what's necessary to keep the doors open. I'm super positive on that. It's just kind of wait. be patient and wait. And yeah.
Anything's possible. Give me 2, 3 years, 5 years. Anything's possible. What would you like to see for the gym, martial arts, for yourself?
Yeah, I guess I haven't. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I mean, there's certain things I really enjoy. Like, I started getting back into traveling, right? I really fell in love. Right before I started the school, I was, traveling a bit. And then once I got like super deep into jiu-jitsu, I kind of just let that stuff go. That became my focus. But I don't know, life goes by really quick, so that for me personally, I there's a lot of places I want to see. I feel like that it exercises my mind. It makes me a better person. It makes me more understanding of humanity. So I want to continue to do that, but I want to continue to build the school. It's a constant project. It never ends. If I get complacent for a day or two, then there's a quick reminder like, oh, don't let that happen. It can be easy to get comfortable, but yeah, I just want to, doing martial arts for as long as I've been doing it. It's hard. It is challenging to maintain a high level of enthusiasm, compared to what I had when I was in my 20s. And I still very much love it. But just like anything else in life, you do something so much, sometimes there's an element of burnout. And I haven't really experienced that, but it's been something I'm cognizant of.
Yeah.
And I'm scared of it. Right.
Yeah.
So I try to take preventative measures, and I find myself like kind of falling in love back with the basics. Like, why did I do this in the first place? And just trying to enjoy, right? Just trying to like love and be passionate, find that fire. I feel like I have to like work to, kind of maintain that. I mean, I probably put in like, I don't know, it depends on the day, but 7 to 9 hours a day where I'm like teaching and training here. So I'm definitely, I'm putting some time into it for sure, but yeah, I want to feel good about it.
Yeah, we got to spend some time doing some of the TACFIT stuff, and hopefully when we open up again, like we can go on some trips together again and do some training trips. Planning on doing a summit in Brazil, probably in December.
Wow.
A whole week of training, and health first approach, right? And it goes so well with jiu-jitsu and martial arts, of course, but it goes with everything, just life in general, so it just expands your horizons, of how to train properly. I'm going to send you some club bells too,
Oh, yes.
Playing around with it. I think there's a couple there right next to Ireland, so I think you're coming by one of these days, but yeah, look forward to spending more time together, more adventures, and
I agree. I think that's a wise decision.
Improving ourselves and helping others do the same, right?
Yeah, that's what it's all about, right? That's why we got into this. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. Thanks for the time, and thank you, Professor. The relationship that we have. I appreciate our time together, our relationship, and I appreciate all that you do for everybody around you. You're of course amazing professor, but just amazing person. So I really value a lot.
Thank you, Professor. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So hopefully I'll see you soon, and keep our head up, right? With all the craziness out there. Yeah. So
happy New Year to you and your family, and I look forward to seeing you hopefully sometime after the new year.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Take care, buddy.